Wait, before you even think about buying your next car, you need to hear this. Right now, there's a hidden loophole that could save you thousands of pounds on a brand new vehicle. But here's the catch. Most people have no idea it exists. And the car dealerships, they're definitely not going to tell you about it. In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how ordinary people are walking into showrooms and driving out with cars that cost £4,000 less than the sticker price. But there's a twist to this story that nobody saw coming, and it's causing absolute chaos in the car industry right now. So here's what's happening. The UK government just announced something that sounds almost too good to be true. They're literally giving away money to help you buy a car, up to £3,750, just handed to you, free money. And you're probably thinking, okay, what's the catch? Because there's always a catch, right? Well, you're absolutely right to be suspicious, because this deal is way more complicated than it first appears. And some of the biggest car manufacturers in the world are absolutely furious about it. But before we get into all the drama, let me take you back a bit, because this isn't the first time the government has tried something like this. Between 2011 and 2022, there was this thing called the plug-in car grant. Basically, if you bought an electric car or a hybrid, the government would give you some money off. And it worked. Over 400,000 people claimed it. The government handed out nearly £1.5 billion. That's billion with a B. But then in 2022, they just stopped it, cut it off completely. No more free money for electric cars. And you know what happened? Electric car sales kept growing, but not as fast. Because here's the reality that nobody wants to talk about. Electric cars are still more expensive than petrol cars. Yeah, I know all the arguments about lower running costs and cheaper charging and all that. But when you're standing in a showroom looking at two nearly identical cars, and one costs £5,000 more just because it's electric, that's a tough pill to swallow. Your brain doesn't care about the money you'll save in 5 years. Your brain cares about the money you need to spend today. So the government had a problem. They've got this deadline coming up where they're going to ban the sale of new petrol and diesel cars. They've got these climate targets they promised the world they'd hit by 2050, but people aren't switching to electric cars fast enough. What do? Simple. You bring back the free money. On July 16th, 2025, they announced a brand new electric car grant, £650 million in the pot. And this time, they're planning to keep it running until sometime in the 2028 to 29 financial year, or until the money runs out, whichever comes first. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The grant comes in two flavors. You can get £3,750 off your new electric car, or you can get £1,500 off. And you're probably wondering, okay, how do I get the bigger discount? That's the question everyone's asking. And the answer is going to surprise you, because it's not about how much money you make. It's not about where you live. It's not about how many electric cars you've owned before. It's about something that most people never even think about when they're buying a car. But first, let's talk about the basic rules, because not every electric car qualifies for this discount, not even close. Rule number 1, the car can't have more than 9 seats. Okay, fine. Most regular cars have 5 or 7 seats anyway, so that's not really a problem for most people. But rule number 2, this is the big one, the car has to cost less than £37,000 to buy brand new. And right there, you've just ruled out a massive chunk of the electric car market. Think about it. A BMW i7? That's a £100,000 car. No discount for you. A top-spec Tesla Model Y? Too expensive. Mercedes EQS? Forget about it. Even some versions of the Volkswagen ID.3 or the Kia EV6 are going to be too pricey. So already, we're talking about a pretty specific slice of the market here. You need to be looking at affordable electric cars, the kind of cars that normal people actually buy. Let's say you find a car you like and it costs £36,000. Perfect, right? You're under the limit, you should get the discount. Well, hold on, because there's some sneaky small print here that you need to know about. Let me give you an example. There's this car called the Cupra Born. Nice little electric hatchback. The range starts at £34,000, so you're well under the £37,000 limit. Great! But you can actually spend more than £44,000 on a Cupra Born if you go for all the fancy trim levels and add some options. And here's the weird part. Even if your final car costs more than £37,000, you can still get the discount, as long as the basic version of your chosen powertrain combination starts under £37,000. Let me say that again because it's confusing. As long as the cheapest version of your chosen powertrain starts under 37,000 pounds, you can add expensive options and fancy trim levels that push the price over 37,000 pounds, and you'll still get the discount. It's like a loophole inside a loophole. Of course, the government realized people were going to exploit this, so they quickly added a hard cap of 42,000 pounds. If your final car costs more than 42,000 pounds, no discount. Sorry. But here's what nobody's telling you. All of those cars I just mentioned, the Cupra Born, the Citroën E3, even if they qualify for the scheme, they're only getting the smaller discount, 1,500 pounds, not the full 3,750 pounds. And this is where the whole thing gets really, really interesting, because to get that maximum discount, to get the full 3,750 pounds off your car, you need to meet some extra criteria. And this is the part that's causing all the chaos. So what's the difference between a car that gets 1,500 pounds off and a car that gets 3,750 pounds off? It all comes down to something called production emissions. Not the emissions from driving the car. Every electric car has zero emissions when you drive it. That's the whole point. No, we're talking about the emissions created while building the car. How much carbon dioxide is pumped into the atmosphere while the factory is assembling your vehicle and manufacturing the battery. And this is where the government has basically rigged the game. To get the full discount, your car needs to have the lowest possible carbon emissions during production. And there are all these requirements. The car needs to have zero tailpipe emissions, obviously. It needs an official range of at least 100 miles on a single charge. The battery warranty has to cover you for at least 8 years or 100,000 miles. And if your battery drops below 70% of its original capacity during that time, the manufacturer has to replace it for free. Okay, fine. Most decent electric cars already do all of that. But then there's this other requirement. The car manufacturer has to have something called a verified science-based target. This is a commitment to reduce their environmental impact in line with international climate agreements. And it has to be verified by this independent organization. And on top of all that, the carbon emissions from vehicle assembly and battery production have to be below certain thresholds. And here's the kicker. The government hasn't even published exactly what those thresholds are. It's all a bit mysterious, but we can make some educated guesses about what this means in practice. Take the Nissan Leaf, brand new version, built right here in the UK at the Sunderland factory. That car is expected to qualify for the full 3,750 pound discount. Why? Because it's built in Britain, where the energy grid is relatively clean, and the factory doesn't have to ship components halfway around the world. Low production emissions, maximum discount. But the Nissan Micra, which is built in France, only gets the 1,500 pound discount. Same company, different factory, different discount. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so only British-built cars get the big discount. But that's not quite right either. Ford just announced that 2 of their electric vans, the E-Transit and the E-Transit Courier, qualify for the full 3,750 pound discount. And guess what? They're built in Romania, not the UK. So how does that work? Well, Ford says the factory in Romania uses completely renewable energy, and they've committed to being fully carbon neutral by 2050. So apparently that's good enough to meet the mystery criteria. Can you see what's happening here? The government has created this system where the discount you get isn't based on the car itself. It's based on where and how the car is made. And this is where things get really controversial. Because there's one country that produces a lot of electric cars. A lot. Cheap ones too. Cars that would normally be perfect for this kind of grant scheme. I'm talking about China. Chinese manufacturers like BYD, MG, NIO, XPeng, Leapmotor. They've been flooding into the UK market over the last few years with electric cars that cost way less than European alternatives. And British buyers have been snapping them up. Because why wouldn't you? If you can get a fully electric SUV for 25,000 pounds instead of 40,000 pounds, that's a no-brainer, right? But there's a problem. These cars are built in China, and China's manufacturing sector still relies heavily on coal power. The carbon emissions from building these cars are significantly higher than cars built in Europe. So even though the cars themselves are fully electric and produce zero emissions when you drive them, the government has decided they don't qualify for any discount at all. Not 3,750 pounds, not 1,500 pounds, nothing. Zero. And the Chinese manufacturers are absolutely livid about this. They're calling it protectionism. They're saying the government has deliberately designed the scheme to shut them out of the market and protect European and British manufacturers. And you know what? They might have a point. When the grant was first announced and it became clear that Chinese brands weren't going to benefit, They took matters into their own hands. MG, one of the biggest Chinese brands in the UK, immediately slashed their prices by £1,500 on some models and $3,750 on others, matching exactly what the government discount would have been. Leap Motor did the same. They basically said, fine, if the government won't give our customers a discount, we'll give them the discount ourselves, which is actually pretty smart when you think about it, because now their cars are just as cheap as the ones that